Alright, hey everybody. So, in this video, I'm gonna kind of go over my thoughts on what I think would be a really good blockchain-based game. And, just generally speaking from the perspective, like, it has to use resources and, just what kind of a platform it would end up actually being. I'm gonna show a game called Disgaea, and I'm going to show my thoughts on how something like this, in combination with a couple of other ideas. See, I actually have a demo that I had already created that showed off an idea for doing a type of RPG type strategy style game on the blockchain where you can like feed your character to do like certain commands, and then the timer would go down. I'm actually thinking about revising a lot of this and actually continuing this, but I have a lot of thoughts regarding how a game like Disgaea works versus how a game where it's more uniform. This is like world space and stuff like that. So in this particular type of game, I'm probably going to get rid of the counter unless you're in an area that needs to be synced up with other players. I think the first iteration of this is going to be literally an end turn button. But, you would click action and then you would interact with the treasure chest. It would open the treasure chest and then there would be loot. And then you choose which loot that you want to actually pick up, by right-clicking it. And then that would be like your turn. Like you'd be able to like pick up a bunch of stuff, and then during that one turn, then you'd click end turn. And now that stuff would be, added to your inventory, right? And then you'd be able to see one of the things like with Disgaea is that it's not really supposed to be for like a more open world kind of an experience. Whereas I want to have sort of a combination of something like Disgaea combined with Runescape, if that makes any sense. And then, like, if I need to go into combat mode, I hit space, and then I click end turn, and then I get access to all of my followers. Which, I mean, I actually kind of think that in Disgaea, this is a pretty interesting... This is a different take on the same sort of concept that, like, Disgaea has, where you have this one tile on the ground where you pull all of your party members out, and then you can start telling them to go around and doing things like, I want the rogue to come over here and like wait near the door. I want the healer like over here facing this direction, and then the fighter can like do a defend action, and then I click and then that opens up the door, and then all the characters do this, right? So this seems pretty doable. The only thing is that well, for one, it's a lot more mathematically intensive to be able to do, like, everything's on a grid here, but to like calculate like what direction a character is facing and where they're actually standing in world space and stuff like that. The math is a lot more intense when it comes to those types of calculations, because of like if your archer is behind some barrels, I would actually need to do within the smart contract, I would actually need to see if the archer can actually see and shoot the rogue through the barrels, and the barrels would actually like block the it would be really weird. Like, it wouldn't be easy to do. And I can't depend on the client, because the idea is that this game would be 100% on-chain, right? But with that said, like, you can enter and exit combat mode. So if I exit combat mode, all of my characters combine back up to my one dude, the leader of the party, right? And now I'm a little bit more able to like run around without having to like tediously move all of my characters every time I want to like run around someplace, you know what I mean? So it makes things a little bit easier, a little bit less taxing on the player in terms of like having to micromanage everything, right? Okay. Well, let's take a look at Disgaea. Actually, let me end this now. So let's I'm just gonna pick a uh-oh, am I gonna get some storyline? Okay. I'm getting a little bit of storyline here. I'm not gonna go to Frozen River. I'm gonna go to a level that's really easy. Okay, so in Disgaea, everything is very much on a grid, right? And this is way less intense mathematically to calculate, and maybe this is probably the better way to go. I don't really know for sure. Like, but now imagine you see like my warrior character, I can move him around, and then when I decide that I'm going in combat mode, that's when I can start selecting my party members, and then I can start, you know, pulling them out and moving them around to places that I want to go, right? So like, and now see, so it's almost it's very similar in concept, except in the demo that I created, you can move, you know, your character is, your main character when he's not in combat mode is this tile, and then when you finally, you know, you hit spacebar and then you go into combat mode, that's when you can pull all your party members and you can start micromanaging all of their different you know, things. Like I can have my I have a healer here, and I'm gonna set her right here. This is actually kind of interesting because I can learn how to use heal randomly. Some characters can like learn abilities by standing next to other characters and stuff like that. I want to see like a lot of this. In fact, if I can make a version of Disgaea that is basically this, but you're able to kind of explore around freely, and then you can go into combat mode, and it's just like open world kind of a thing. My God, that would be really fucking good, right? Because like a lot of the stuff about this game is really, really fucking cool. And to me, it's turn-based, right? And that's one of the other things too. Like when it comes to like running out of resources on the blockchain and stuff like that. Well, on EOS, if you run out of CPU, you have to wait a little bit, and then it replenishes on its own, like over time, and then you can continue playing, right? Well, a game like this kind of would flow that way as well, right? Like after, you know, I was like, oh, I did some moving around. I opened up a few treasure chests, and then I ran out of CPU. I can buy more CPU, or I can chill out and like do something else for a minute and come back to the game, because it's all turn-based, right? That's why I think I'm getting rid of this timer. The timer would only make sense in a place where there are other people connected. You know what I mean? But I don't even think then it really makes any sense. All you have to really have is a end turn, or, you know, complete actions button that literally just sits right here, and then I can, you know what I mean? And that would actually be really all I would ever really need. And then you can do the stuff where you like click end turn, right? I don't know why I did that. I was just doing it as an example. And then these dudes come in, and because of the way that they're standing next to each other, they perform attacks, special attacks by standing in formation. That's another thing that's a lot easier to do when everything's on a fixed grid like this. However, there's also a lot to be said about having things not in a fixed grid, where it's more freeform like this. You know what I mean? Because now, like, when I go into the next area, let's say I open up the iron door, I go in, I got the 2 giant bats, and then I want to immediately go right into combat mode, right? So in terms of like the smart contract and everything like that, the AI actually needs to be activated by my pressing end turn. So like it all needs to as soon as I go into this setup where I'm saying okay, end turn, the AI is going to function that way where it reacts to what I did, right? And then I have my healer here, right? So now everybody's all set up. So this giant bat would like move over here and would probably attack the archer. The warrior would block an attack from the giant bat, right? You'd see all these like different abilities going off and explosions and stuff while it says while it's doing the whole like updating blockchain thing. You would actually see like the characters run to a spot and then they would explode something, and then you'd see character, and this dude would pull out 2 daggers and you'd start to stab. The giant bat would take like 20 damage, and then the healer would, you know what I mean? You'd see all these like graphics that kind of distract you from the fact that the blockchain is updating. So the client can actually do everything in such a way where it's like it has to. The client assumes all of the things that you did are legit, and then the blockchain confirms it afterwards, basically. And if something turns out that it wasn't legit, like there was somebody tried to cheat or something like that, then it would cause like problems, right? And then it would cause some kind of an issue, like characters out of sync, and maybe it would, I don't know how that would work yet. That's a whole nother can of worms. But alright, so now the giant bat's toast. Now I tell the archer to go this way and perform a ability, and like a sharp shot, attack the giant bat. Send the healer over here. But now I also have the ability to do things that are a lot more fine-tuned, like but the thing is that the math is more complicated doing it this way. Like, some player would try to do something like try to move the character up here, right? The client, you can hack the client so that the client doesn't, allows you to try to do that. But the blockchain would have to, like, once it starts to sync up with the blockchain, then it would have to say, well, this is an invalid move, you can't do that. It would say invalid transaction or something like that, right? So it would fail. It would be kind of really hard to cheat with a game like this. But I mean, so like, I can take Etna, move her up, attack, and I can execute. Well, you wouldn't be able to see, one of the things in Disgaea, one of the biggest strategy points is that you could do things. You could do things a little bit at a time. Like I can attack while it's still my turn. In a blockchain-based game, you wouldn't be able to do that. You would have to do everything. You would have to move all your characters to where you want them, and do all of their commands, and just assume and hope that yeah, it's gonna be an interesting prospect to kind of set all that up, but you would have to do everything in one go. You wouldn't be able to do it a little bit at a time like I'm doing right here. You'd always have to click end turn, right? Which I guess kind of puts the monsters at a disadvantage, because they would always have to be reacting to what the player did, I guess, because I don't think it's a good idea to do a timer like this between turns, because it's just going to cause spam on the blockchain. So literally, when you start this game off, you just end turn. You just click end turn whenever you're ready to go, and it does it. And then the character runs up, and he does the thing. And I guess in some way I should probably try to hide this a little bit and like put it off to the side. But you'd have like a world map, local map, you know, party members, maybe there would be more of them. Maybe I could do a thing where whenever you enter combat mode, like there's a little thing on the floor and that's where you pull your teammates out of and you can choose, you know, a set number of them or something like that. I don't know, it'd be kind of interesting. Might be a little bit bogged down if you get more than 4 though. But, okay, so that's kind of like my idea on the concept, right? I mean, there's a lot of like really interesting things that can be done. And maybe it's not as bad as I think it is because it is on a grid. Maybe it's fine. But one of the things I guess I would have to really look into is like how much more complicated the math will be if I actually have to draw, you know, if I have to actually check if the archer can see a, you know, a giant bat that's like right here versus like right here. Like, maybe it's not that bad. I don't know, like in terms of like smart contract and stuff like that, I'm not really sure yet what kind of you know, if I'm going to be able to do those kinds of calculations. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to ask for help regarding that. But like if it's possible, I think that this would actually be really interesting. And if possible, I mean, like, you know, like the healer, like when the healer drops an AoE heal on the ground, it's actually, you know, a cylinder or an area of effect cylinder that's round, right? Instead of like having to keep everything so much on just the grid. But then I could I can make the world into a grid for like easier calculations or something like that. Maybe either that, either that, or maybe the grid just needs to be more fine-tuned, like maybe double the density of the grid. I don't know what kind of resources this is going to take and stuff like that, because I want to try and do larger worlds and stuff like that. Because in the case of Disgaea, usually it's a map that's really about this size, but I want to have like an exploration aspect where you're actually, you know what I mean? You're actually doing stuff. Like, you know, you might visit a forest or something, and there's like, oops, let's hit Laharo with his own. So now they all attack like right here. Alright. Jesus, he's just ripping them all, and you asshole, because I choose an easier map than I'm supposed to be on right now. But then let's see. So you have like special, defend, item. I could use item on myself. I could heal that little bit of damage. I mean, this is all the same exact concept. It's exactly the same kind of thing. The only difference is that it would be based more on world coordinates, and that's really it. All right, so that's my thoughts on this. I think this is actually the way to go, and I guess for now, I might continue actually working on this prototype and see if I can get it to a state where, I don't know. So with that said, with this video, I'm gonna have to try and figure out an easy way to ask this this kind of question with somebody who's more experienced with blockchain or smart contract programming. Is it going to be possible for me within a smart contract to determine that there's a treasure chest in the way so I can't attack a monster that's over here? You know what I mean? Or is it going to be possible for me to determine whether or not moving my character in a wall or something like that is actually going to be a valid thing? Like, and how would I store that on the blockchain? Like, would it just be a grid? I'm thinking that it would literally just be a grid. The world would have to be, like, just a set number, a set, like, grid. And then I would make art over it that would make it look pretty, make it look like something. But everything would actually be a grid. I'm thinking, you know what I mean? A grid with heights and stuff like that too. So like there would be different floors and, well, like different floor heights and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm imagining that, I mean, it's all really just boils down to math, but I don't know how I would do that. So that's the only question. Because if I can't do it that way, then I'm pretty sure I could probably do it this way, where everything is just a set, very easy grid. Like, is that a valid space for me to move the character? And, you know, does he have an attack? Stuff like that. Sorry, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna end the video here. This is exactly the kind of stuff. Like, this right here is... I want this combined with this. Where it's... Oh my god, it just feels right. It feels like it would be a really great combination. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to play some Disgaea for a little bit.